what the word of the week is?
The word of the week is remembrance.
The definition of remembrance is the action of remembering something or someone.
November is a month of remembering. There's even a rhyme that mentions this. Remember, remember the 5th of November. November also includes All Saints and All Souls, when we remember and give thanks for the people who showed us how to live for God and taught us how to love.
Remembrance Day also takes place in November, which is why this week's word of the week is remembrance.
What is Remembrance Day?
Remembrance Day is an annual event where we remember all the people who have lost their lives while serving in the armed forces. It's also called Armistice Day or Poppy Day.
In Britain, Remembrance Day has been tradition since the end of the First World War. It is also celebrated in many different countries across the globe. People from different backgrounds, cultures and religions come together to honour Remembrance Day.
We remember the bravery and courage of those who fought in the world wars on Remembrance Day, but we also commemorate all those who have served in the army since, and those who are serving in the army today.
When is Remembrance Day?
Remembrance Day 2020 will take place on Wednesday the 11th of November.
Remembrance Day is celebrated every year on the 11th of November. This is because during World War I, the conflict ended at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. How is Remembrance Day honoured? From laying wreaths to watching parades, there are lots of ways that people in Britain commemorate Remembrance Day each year.
One important moment that happens every year on Remembrance Day is a 2-minute silence held at 11 a.m. on 11th of November. The silence takes place across the country.
Many TV channels and radio stations ask audience members to join them in holding a silence. There are even announcements about the silence in supermarkets.
It's up to each person how they choose to spend their 2-minute silence. Usually people will think about the sacrifices made by people in the armed forces, or they will remember loved ones that lost their lives at war.
Wearing a poppy throughout November is another popular way to commemorate Remembrance Day. The red poppy is a sign of remembrance and a symbol of hope and for a peaceful future. The red poppy is used because it was the first flower that began to grow again on the battlefields of the First World War.
What does remembrance mean to you?
Well, dear, and I think at the minute, this particular week and this month of November, that's a really important question to be asking. And to me, remembrance is about thinking back and remembering different events that have happened and different people who have been in your life in some way or another. So whenever I do some remembering, I think back in my life to big events that have happened, and a lot of those were around celebrations in the church. So I can think back and remember my first Holy Communion, and I can think back and remember my confirmation, and I can think back and remember getting married, and those were really, really happy times in my life. They were very important times in my life, and there were a lot of people who are very special to me who were part of those, and they have helped me to keep those memories alive, because I think it's very important that we keep those memories alive, so that when we start to think back about maybe people that we don't see so much anymore, we can still have a really good memory of them and how they impacted on our lives. And I think also it helps us, those were really happy times for me, and I think also this helps us to think back maybe to some times in our life where things that maybe weren't so happy. So I can think back to remember people like my grandparents who are no longer with us, and I try to keep their memory alive by talking to my husband about them, by talking to my mum and dad about them, And then that helps me to think about really important things like we're thinking about it's going to be Remembrance Sunday this week. And that helps us to think about those men and women in the past who really gave up their lives to help us have a better today. Because if it wasn't for all of those things that they did, our lives wouldn't be as amazing as they are today. So that's why I think it's really important to keep those memories alive.
Henry, what does remembrance mean to you?
Remembrance means to me when I remember all my friends and family, even those who have died.
Henry, what is an important memory that you remember?
I remember when Jesus sacrificed himself to save us all.
Jacob, what does remembrance mean to you?
Remembrance means to me remembering people who have sadly passed away.
Jacob, what's an important memory that you remember?
I remember all of the wonderful things that my parents have done for me.
What does remembrance mean to you?
Remembrance means to me when you remember important things about the past.
Zitel, have you got a special memory that you remember?
My sister's Holy Communion.
There is a story in the Bible about a time when the Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years following their escape from Egypt under the leadership of Moses. Now led by Joshua, they approached the land which they would eventually live. However, in front of them was the River Jordan, which they would need to cross before moving forward.
In the story, priests carried a special sacred box called the Ark of the Covenant to the river, and the water from the upstream stopped flowing, enabling people to cross the river on dry ground. After everyone had crossed, Joshua gave the people an order.
This week's scripture is from the book of Joshua chapter 4 verses 4 to 8. How does this link to the word remembrance?
Joshua chose 12 men. He called them together and told them, Go to the middle of the riverbed where the sacred chest is, and pick up a large rock. Carry it on your shoulder to our camp. There are 12 of you, so there will be one rock for each tribe.
Someday your children will ask, why are these rocks here? Then you can tell them how the water stopped flowing when the chest was being carried across the river. These rocks will always remind our people of what happened here today. The men followed the instructions that God had given Joshua. They picked up 12 rocks, one for each tribe, and carried them to the camp where they put them down.
Joshua wanted the people to remember this moment, so he told them to take the 12 stones from the river and put them in the camp as a reminder of all God had done for them. Stones were something strong and permanent that would remind future generations of what had happened. These stones are often referred to as stones of remembrance. In the scripture from Joshua, we heard how the stones were used as a symbol of remembrance so that the future generations would remember what happened.
This links to our lives today, as many people wear poppies during November as a symbol of remembrance for those who gave their lives while serving in the armed forces.
To reflect on the word this week, we will pray the poppy wreath prayer. You will need a blank poppy template, a red crayon and a black crayon.
Look at your blank poppy template. As you do this, remember all those who have died sacrificing their lives in the armed forces.
Using your red and black crayons, colour in the poppy and give thanks to God for all those who have fought and gave their lives for the rest of us and our future.
When you have done this, wait for an adult to ask you to come up one at a time and lay your puppy to create a wreath along with your classmates. As you do this, pray to God that we can have a peaceful future without conflict.
How does Remembrance link to our school mission statement? We must place our trust in God that the sacrifices made by those in the armed force have helped today by providing us with the freedom we enjoy. We must also trust in God that the sacrifices still being made by many today is created a better tomorrow for the future generations.
Your mission this week is to remember the sacrifices that many have made for us and not to take these for granted. Work towards creating a peaceful future by promoting peace between us all today. Please also make sure that you are being respectful during the 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. on Wednesday.